In honor of Groundhog Day, hi, 3 cheeseburgers, 2 large fries, 2 milkshakes, and 1 large Coke. Don't drive angry.
That's nice.
That's one of the greatest movies of all time.
It's a damn good movie. I probably haven't seen it in 20 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined by the effervescent Scott Nelson.
Nicely done.
This week, I realized there's a lot of words that we all know. We just don't use them in regular conversation. I think we should.
Okay, you know what? I'll take being effervescent.
When's the last time you used the word effervescent?
It's been a minute. Honestly, it probably was in the context of a Friends episode.
Really?
The one where Chandler takes a bath.
Oh, that's a good episode.
Yeah. The bath salts. They're effervescing.
That's right.
It's different. It's interesting.
That's funny. Friends is a way of always making the day better. Do you have a favorite episode?
Oh, man, that's tough.
Mine's the one with the prom video.
That's a really good one. He's her lobster, obviously.
Right. That's right.
Gosh. I mean, I love the sequence where they're in Barbados. I think that's a good one. Both of the ones in Vegas. The one after London is one of my favorites.
In London.
All
right. So we are recording this on Thursday, February 1st, which means tomorrow is Groundhog Day. So sometime tomorrow morning, Puxatawny Phil, the groundhog, will peek his head out of a hole in the ground or a box or a fake log or something, and he'll see his shadow or not. Which is which?
I believe that if he sees his shadow, he gets scared, he runs back in, and we have 6 more weeks of winter.
I think that's right. If it's nice that day, that's how I think of it. If it's sunny, he sees it, longer winter. If it's cloudy, it's really winter now, thus less winter.
That is the theory, although I am skeptical about whether or not, a ground-based rodent seeing their shadow can give accurate meteorological data.
Statistically, he has been wrong more often than he's been right, and so we should just flip it the other way. If he sees his shadow, spring is coming, because that would actually be right more of the time.
If I was Puxatawny Phil, that's what I would say. I'd be like, guys, it's not that I've been wrong. It's that you guys are misinterpreting my signals.
That's fair. Except for if you were Puxatawny Phil, you wouldn't talk because you'd be a rodent.
Hey guys. To see my shadow. Oh no.
I love that that's your groundhog voice.
It's my small
That's your
woodland creature voice.
Small woodland creature voice. All right. I like it.
All right. So, in the spirit of Groundhog Day, we're going to end this episode casting a few of our own predictions, see if we see our shadow, about what to expect on Monday for the governor's State of the State address, and then some really looking into the Magic 8 Ball about what might happen during this session. This is not scientific. This is just Scott and I trying to guess. Shot in the dark.
Perusing.
And winner gets
ruminating.
A tote bag, I guess. That's what we give away.
Right.
All right. So before we get to our Groundhog Day predictions, a couple of things that have happened this week of note. Scott, you mentioned Senate Bill 876.
Yeah, so there's Senate Bill 876. So this is a measure that has been filed by Senator Standridge, who I believe is from Norman, I think. Mm-hmm. Senator Standridge. So this is a bill. This is the Right Side Up Government Act of 2018. This is interesting to me. I mean, the title's half the battle, right? This is an interesting bill. So this would replace legislative liaisons with legislative auditors. So right now, many state agencies, there's 145 state agencies that fall into this category, have a staffer, an employee whose really their sole job is to go to the Capitol, interact with legislators. They talk to the representatives, they talk to the senators about, here's what's happening at our agency. These are the projects we're working on. Here's been recent successes. Here's maybe things that we need to improve on. Oh, and by the way, these areas that we need to improve on, it would be super helpful if you would give us more money so we could do better jobs.
Right. They've got to answer questions, and there's no way that the legislature can know everything that's going on in every state agency, and so they need to ask questions and find out, like what's happening. Well, the health department, certainly what's happening over there, but even DHS, successes, failures, needs, wants, whatever. They've got to have someone over there to talk to.
Yeah, you could, the legislative liaison, their function is kind of a go between the agency and the legislature, but in practice, a lot of times they almost act as like a lobbyist for the agency. Like their job is not just to communicate between the legislature and government agencies, but also to advocate for the agency, advocate on their behalf to the senators and the reps.
I would say that is education, right? Like you said, this is what we're doing, this is what we need money for.
Sure.
And you've got to have someone whose job is to do that. There's no way the legislature will just know a priori knowledge that, oh, right, well, they need a new building or whatever.
Right, and that's a great point. I think one thing that happens in our political discourse, both here locally and nationally, and this has been really true certainly in the last 10 years, and really even probably going back a little bit further than that, is the idea that lobbyists are like intrinsically evil. Like we hear, oh, this bill was just written by a lobbyist, or, K Street lobbyists in Washington are the only ones that have any influence. And certainly, I think that there can be a corrupting influence of money in politics. And secondarily to that, anytime someone is being paid by a particular interest group, industry, whatever, to go advocate on their behalf, it doesn't mean that they're giving bad information. It doesn't mean that they're, a bad person, but it just means, okay, if I'm hearing a lobbyist for, say, the coal industry, the information that they're giving me is probably coming from the coal industry to paint them in the best possible light. And you just have to know that. Like, you just have to know that about them and know that that's part of their job. And it's similar, I think, with these people that are interacting with state agencies and state legislators on behalf of agencies. No one person, particularly if you're a freshman, right? If you're a freshman who's in your first session at the Capitol, you may not know what most of these agencies do. And the legislative liaisons provide about a valuable resource to kind of get you some of that information.
Sure.
Senator Stanbridge's bill would essentially do away, if I understand it correctly, it would essentially do away with the position of legislative liaison and replace it with a legislative auditor. So this would take these employees who now work for these particular agencies and replace them with an employee who reports to the legislature. So the legislature writes their paycheck. And part of their job would be to kind of conduct ongoing internal audits of agency finances, and so they could report to the legislature in a detailed way about how a particular agency is spending their money.
And it has an exclusion for agencies where the executive director or the commissioner, whatever the head person is, if that person it kind of serves a dual role, they obviously wouldn't have, they'd be excluded. They'd still be director of that position.
Yeah, so if the CEO of an agency or the director or whatever also serves as the legislative liaison, you're not going to replace the director with an internal auditor. It's an interesting bill, and this is, I think this is one of those bills that at first glance, right, like when you first hear about it, you're like, man, all the financial problems that the state's having recently, this sounds like a great idea. Like, why would we want to do this? You and I have talked here on the pod about how is it possible that the legislature doesn't understand how agencies spend their money? How is it possible that they don't know? How is it possible that these agencies, haven't been audited in 15 years or 20 years or what have you? But if you take a step back and think about what the implications are, I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Who then is going to advocate on behalf of these agencies, right? You're the Office of Water Quality. I feel, I don't know, I just made that up. I don't know if we have an Office of Water Quality. You've got some obscure agency that no one's really sure what it does. Well, there's lots of small government agencies that actually do important work.
Isn't there a peanut commission or something?
I mean, probably. I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Is it appropriate to just replace the legislative liaisons with someone who now works for the legislature and kind of do away with the ability of agencies to have that kind of professional advocate? Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. So I think it's worth mentioning or reminding that this is an election year. And so a lot of the legislation, a lot of the 2,000 bills that have been filed are aimed at being filed and not necessarily passing.
Right.
So that someone can say, I filed a bill about this.
Government accountability, government oversight.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, someone could say, I filed a bill to give teachers a $20,000 pay raise. Has zero chance of passing, but man, it looks good and something good when you're knocking doors and telling teachers, I filed a bill. Man, those guys just didn't take it anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that, that may be the intent of this bill. He's attached an emergency clause to it, which you and I were talking about for the pod. People do all the time. So
which just enacts it sooner.
Right.
And it's two separate votes. They vote for the bill, and if it passes, then they vote on the emergency, and it's a higher threshold. It's a 60% threshold to get that.
Right.
And it would go into effect in 30 days instead of 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if it goes anywhere. I think the other issue is, you could, I think the other argument you could make is, all right, well, we don't want to do away with legislative liaisons, but maybe we have these auditors in addition. Well, now you're just creating a whole other, you've basically, it's a whole other department, right? Like, you've just added kind of another layer of bureaucracy, which doesn't go over well in a small government state like Oklahoma. And two, I don't know how we would afford it. So I guess one question I would have for Senator Stanbridge is, why do we need this? We have a state auditor. We have a state auditor whose office is, I think, arguably overworked and underfunded. Why don't we just appropriate more money to the state auditor so that the state auditor's office can conduct this kind of oversight, do these audits where it's needed, and we avoid creating another layer of bureaucracy. We don't cost the legislative liaisons their job, and I bet that doing it that way would be cheaper.
Well, and you'd already have people with expertise in auditing, that kind of thing.
Right.
My hunch is that I think the answer to your question is contained therein, that the state auditor's office is overworked and underfunded, and we have no money to give them.
We could raise taxes.
I don't have a snappy comeback, but yes, we could raise taxes. I do think it's funny that the bill is entitled the Right Side Up Government Act of 2018, which is different than the right size of government, which is another buzzword or phrase you hear tossed around.
Indeed. So that was the bill that kind of caught my eye this week as I was, looking forward to Monday.
A quick follow-up. There is indeed an Oklahoma Peanut Commission. They have a website, okpeanutcom.org. However, their calendar of events has not been updated since 2016, or they just haven't had any events since 2016. I'm a little bummed that in March of 2016, they had an Oklahoma Peanut Expo in Altus. I would attend. I love small town festivals.
Oh yeah, and peanuts are delicious.
International Peanut Forum. Well, that was in Spain. Hot dog.
You think we could get somebody from the Peanut Commission on the pod?
The USA Peanut Congress, the American Peanut Research and Education Society meeting in Florida, and Septemberfest, which is in September. It was about 2 years ago.
Fun fact: I was part of the inaugural Septemberfest celebration held at the governor's mansion under the supervision of one Kathy Keating. Yeah.
What was your role?
I was in a sketch, if you will, a role-playing kind of situation.
Some drama?
Yeah, I was either Lewis or Clark or somebody. I was young.
How old were you?
I think 6th grade.
Okay. So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
I will forgive you for not knowing who you were in this pivotal, seminal, dramatic moment.
Yeah, I was one of those explorer type people.
Fair enough. All right, so let's move from the Right Side Up Government Act of 2018 to a brief update on the Step Up Coalition. Continues to be the most talked about plan that I've seen in recent history. This is the plan put forth by the business community. On yesterday, I attended the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, their annual legislative breakfast. And it was certainly, as any chamber would be, it's a business organization, so lots of discussion about the Step Up plan. They've also had some other people sign on, including some Democrats. Has truly become more of a bipartisan agreement, I think. We saw OU President David Boren sign on. We saw all of the living governors, including Governor Brett Henry, who was a Democrat, and Governor Walters, who was a very outspoken Democrat.
That's a true story.
And I think he was the one that surprised me the most. Like when he signed on, I was like, well, now it's getting serious. This is a big deal. The Oklahoma Education Association, the OEA, which is the teachers union, they signed on. The Oklahoma Hospital Association has signed on. So there's a lot of groups, including some of those groups that you might not expect joining forces with, like the oil and gas industry, let's say. And from what I hear, is that everyone's like, listen, OEA would like to get a $10,000 teacher pay raise. They have a bill for that's proposed this year. The step-up plan would give them a $5,000 raise. And they're like, you know what? That's better than nothing. Let's don't be jerks. Like, let's not bite the hand that feeds us. We need a teacher pay raise if this is going to pass.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right. There you go. So I think those kind of things we're starting to see more and more groups sign on, more and more kind of people of note. However,
are we seeing any legislators sign on?
That's what I was going to say. So I heard two different numbers. I heard a Democrat say that there were 71 votes, and I had a Republican tell me there was only 40 votes. That seems awfully low.
There's more than 40 votes.
Yeah. But the last I heard was 71, and the people think that some of it, there may be a few of those core Republicans, the Platform Caucus, the far right, no tax, no way, no how.
The same people who killed every other revenue measure.
Right. That maybe a couple of those have cracked and are flipping. But I think there's still a couple of Democrats that are in flux as well. And the interesting thing is that somehow, against all the scientific odds, the tobacco lobby is still hanging on. They would like to see the $1.50 tobacco tax, which we've talked about for 3 years now. They want it to be 75 cents, which all the studies say that it has to be at least $1 to have any behavioral change.
Which is why they don't want it to be $1.
Right. And if it's 75 cents, they can give you coupons to make it the same price.
Right.
So it would have no impact, and there would be no impact on teen smoking. And it just as a individual, as a person, it is flabbergasting that in this day and age, with the mountain of evidence, I mean, the packages literally say, like, this causes cancer, that they still have enough power to be like, no, we want people to keep smoking. They want replacement smokers, as they call them.
Yeah,
teenagers.
Yeah, their newest deal I saw earlier last week. There's a new product coming out now where it's like a capsule, and it burns tobacco some way, like inside an electronic device,
like a vape.
It's like a vape, but instead of nicotine, like, it does actually burn the tobacco, and it's like their new thing. Like, this is going to be how they try to get people to start smoking in the future.
Is it like a pill
No, it's a when I say capsule, I mean, like, it's encapsulated. Like, it doesn't smoke. Like, the smoke is contained inside a chamber, and you, like, suck on that chamber to get it out. But it's not
there's like no secondhand smoke.
Well, it is when you breathe it out.
Less secondhand smoke.
Yeah. No, the tobacco industry is, I mean, they're something else, but
hey, people need jobs. Let's just maybe find them jobs that don't kill people.
I mean, I think that'd be nice. Yeah. No, Step Up's interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes. I think 40 is ridiculous. 71, I could believe that. I could buy 71.
Well, we had 71 votes last session or sometime in the special session or something.
But again, it's funny to me that people say, oh yeah, well, there's 71 votes for the Step Up plan. What does that mean? Because as we've talked about at length, this cannot be, there's no Step Up plan bill.
Right.
There can't be. Right? There would have to be, unless there's been a rule change that we don't know about, unless there's something kind of funny going on, there would have to be, at a minimum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different revenue bills. Okay, I can absolutely believe that cigarette tax, which is one of the revenue proposals, would get 71. The gross production tax, I think you could probably get to 71 since they're only going to 4. Motor fuels, you'd probably get to 71. Wind power, I think you'd get 75 on wind power, because there's just a lot of people at the Capitol that hate wind power.
And they're pushing back really hard, though.
Refundable income tax credits, you probably could get there. Gaming, you could get there. I could be wrong. I personally do not see a universe in which there are 75 votes or 76 votes to raise the personal income tax.
So that is the tricky thing, because there's the 7 revenue measures plus 11 policy reforms.
Right.
And these would all have to be separate bills because
Right.
we have the single subject rule in our Constitution.
Right. And like lowering the supermajority required to raise revenue. That's one of the 11 government reforms. I don't think the legislature can do that because that was a state question that altered the Constitution, right? So
Right.
That,
It would be a constitutional amendment which has to go to the vote of the people.
right. So that's something like that's not even something that the legislature can do.
Right.
So when people say, "Oh, there's this many votes for step up," or "There's this many votes for step up," I just want to ask, like, what does that mean? Like, which part of the plan are you saying has 71 people?
And even with that, groups like OEA have said like they support raising revenue, but they haven't necessarily like signed on to all of the policy changes. And I think you're starting to see some kind of fracturing in some areas there.
You know, looking at this, I think that this session, I think we could get the tobacco tax. I think we could get the GPT from 2 to 4. I think we could get motor fuel and wind power. I don't know that we could get refundable income tax credits. I don't know that they can get the personal income tax. And the other thing is, maybe you've seen this, I haven't seen this. Have you seen a breakdown of how much revenue is generated by each one of these measures? Because it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, this raises 800 million, but you know, if half of that is coming from refundable income tax credits and personal income tax, and you can't get those two things, then suddenly this doesn't help us nearly as much as we thought, right?
Right.
Like the cigarette tax is something like 200 million, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 215, but all these numbers I think are flexible.
Right.
The other thing is it depends when they're passed. And so what I heard today is that there is a big push to get all of these heard and passed within the next 2 weeks, the revenue measures, because they still have to wait 90 days because there's a 90-day clause.
Unless they attach emergency clauses to all
and
of
there's
them.
it doesn't matter because they can't on these because it's such a high threshold. And so there's no emergency option there.
Okay.
And so it has to be 90 days on any revenue measure. And the sooner we pass them, then the sooner we can start getting revenue. Had we passed these, and we need this money.
Yesterday.
Yeah, the sooner we pass these, the sooner we can start getting money. And we needed this money yesterday because this has to be for the current 2017 or 2018 fiscal year. And we don't have that budget finalized yet. So we have to do that first so that hopefully by April or May, we can start collecting this revenue that will be needed in that month. I also heard earlier this week that one of the state agencies that was supposed to receive money from the cigarette tax, and I'm not sure if it's DHS or the Healthcare Authority, but one of them may have run out of money faster than what they anticipated because it's been more costly because we have more people. And so that might mean that instead of running out of money in April, we're going to run out in March. And then what happens? They're going to just deny care for a month. They're going to cut provider rates, or I'm not sure.
Well, and the other thing complicating this is, right, we're still, I mean, they're recessed. They're not in session today, but we still haven't resolved the second special session from 2017, right? So when they take up the step-up plan, or if they take up these components of the step-up plan, is that going to happen as part of the regular 2018 session, or is that going to happen as part of the 2017 special session?
I heard it's going to be part of the 2017 session. What I expect to happen is on Monday, following the State of the State. So the governor will deliver the State of the State address around noon, 12:30 on Monday. And then after that, the legislature will officially gavel in for the 2018 regular session. They'll gavel in, do a few things.
Recognize new members, like do that.
Recognize new members. They'll hear all the bills will be considered first read. They won't list them all. They just say this is considered the first reading of all the bills, and they're assigned to committees. And then they will gavel out at some point, and then gavel back in as the 2017 second special session or extraordinary session, and start the process of here, because these bills have to still be heard three times before they can really be voted on. So they got to get that process going, like on Monday, with the hope they can vote on them and get them passed within 2 weeks.
Hey kids, for all you guys listening at home, this is a really great example of why you should do things right the first time. If you do things right the first time, there's less pressure, there's less hassle, you don't have to be in a hurry, you don't have to worry about making mistakes. Just take your time and do it right the first time. Don't be like the Oklahoma State government.
Yeah, it's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. And this is honestly like an unprecedented area for us. We haven't had two special sessions. We haven't had a concurrent special session in a long time. Likely never for any of these people or for a big number of these folks that are in office. And so what's funny is that I was talking to a guy the other night who has been a Democrat, not his whole life, but for a very long time. He used to work for the state Senate back in the early 90s when it was a majority Democrat legislature. In fact, the ratio was almost the same, but flipped, right? So we had a supermajority of Democrats.
Yeah.
They passed House Bill 1017, which was the big education amendment deal that kind of was a big tax increase.
It was the impetus for State Question 640.
Right. So 2 years later, that passed in 1990, and then 2 years later, in 92, they passed State Question 640, which set this high threshold for revenue-raising measures, and and the tide had begun to shift towards Republicans, and then you fast forward 25 years, here we are, where it's a supermajority of Republicans, and now the same group that got it passed are trying to get it amended. Which, fine. I mean, that's something, it's a lesson learned. We just have to find ways to correct it now so that our state doesn't continue down this path of insolvency.
I mean, do they have bills for all these? I mean, does all these revenue measures have bills? Have they found people to run the bills? Like, where are we in the process of all the kind of components of Step Up?
Not that I've seen. And this has been a big, I think this has been the response from a lot of Democrats, is that they support raising revenue because clearly we need it, but they want to see the bills first.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, we all want to see the bills. So they haven't actually been put out there yet. And that's kind of why they got to start the process this week, is to really get the ball rolling.
Somebody's going to have a long weekend.
Yeah. There may be some late nights early on in session.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think, in the past, it's beginning of session. There's not a lot happens, right?
No,
There's a lot of grandstanding, right? There's a lot of make all of the animals the property of Almighty God kind of bills at the beginning. There's a lot of social issue bills dealing with things like abortion, bathrooms, gay marriage, these sorts of things. Those tend to happen, I think, more at the beginning of legislature than at the end.
Right. I mean, out of the 2,000 bills that have been proposed, they all go to a committee, or they're all assigned to a committee, and at least half of them are not even heard. And so there's a lot of uproar about some of these maybe, kind of outrageous bills that won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I encourage everyone, don't waste all your energy on stuff that's totally nuts. Kind of wait and see what happens. It is a lot of work for legislators. Like they have long committee meetings where they're reviewing 20, 30 bills, and it's tough to think about and talk about all these bills and give them each the time they're due in the confines of what they have to work with.
Well, and particularly if you're, and I'm, there are folks out there who I think have, there are good reasons for this. There are folks out there that feel like everyone who's in government, or at least in the legislative process of government, should have a background in law. I don't know that I would go that far, but I'll tell you, if you've ever sat down and tried to actually read a bill, it is hard.
It's some dry reading.
If you are not used to reading legislative language, or even if you are used to reading legislative language, it can be tough to kind of really dissect exactly what these things do. And again, we've talked about term limits, and this is, I think appropriate to bring up here because one of the government reforms that the Step Up folks have proposed is to modify term limits. I haven't seen details of that, but I assume it's that they want to either extend them or do away with them.
Extend them to 16 years.
To 16 years from 12 currently. So right now, if you are elected in the House or the Senate in Oklahoma, you can serve a total of 12 years in both chambers. The House serves 2-year terms. The Senate serves 4-year terms. So you can do 6 in the House, 3 in the Senate, or any combination thereof. And I guess they want to extend that to 16 years. There's a steep learning curve that comes with these jobs. And it can easily be 6, 7, 8 years before you really hit your stride. And by that point, a lot of people want to do something else. They've moved on to other positions in government. There's a lot of people who don't serve out the full 12 years. So there's really a lack of institutional knowledge. It's interesting to see, or it will be interesting to see on Monday. I think you're right. I don't think that anyone currently, in fact, I know, because of term limits, no one currently serving in the House or the Senate has ever had a concurrent special session and regular session. It has not happened in the last 12 years.
Right.
So, procedurally, I assume that they're kind of doing some review, looking up the rules. Hey, anybody know how we do this?
My hunch is that it's that feeling of oh, I should not have taken 16 hours this semester, right? Like, it's
Right.
like one thing too much.
Right. Well, and the thing is that, it sounds like it's maybe kind of a silly question, like, oh my God, like, who cares what the rules are, how they do it? The reason that the rules matter is because if you try to gavel in, right, or if you try to do this and then you don't follow the rules and then a bill passes or doesn't pass or something, there can be challenges later that whatever the outcome is wasn't valid because the procedure wasn't followed.
Right. And as we know, this current legislature maybe doesn't always follow the rules to a T. So
Right.
let's not screw it up again. All right. So let's change gears. And I do want to give a quick plug for there's a group that meets weekly or every couple of weeks called the Oklahoma Advocates Table. This is a nonpartisan group, not a coalition, just a group of groups, actually. Bailey Perkins over at the Oklahoma Policy Institute is kind of the one that organizes this. If you are interested in participating, you just need to email Bailey and find out kind of where we meet. I go to a lot of the meetings just to kind of sit in and listen and find out kind of what everyone's hearing. So it's a pretty open group. It's not secretive or anything. And so if you're interested in participating, there are some citizen advocates that come just on their own, as well as some representatives of certain organizations or trade groups. But it's a chance for everyone to kind of share, like, hey, this is what our legislative priorities are this year. This is the bills we're working on. For me today, the first meeting this year, I just said, for Let's Fix This, we're just hoping to get a lot more people to the Capitol. We're really hoping people will show up, tune in and show up. We're not pushing any policy. It's just a chance to get involved.
And speaking of showing up at the Capitol, your very first opportunity to do that is coming up in about 4 days from today.
That's right.
So Monday, February 5th, State of the State Address, Governor Fallon will be addressing the state legislature, giving her annual speech where she outlines her priorities for the 2018 legislative session and for the state throughout the year. Andy and I will be there. We'll be there listening, live tweeting, getting some interviews for the pod, and bringing you the very latest about what happens at the legislature on our first day of session and with Governor Fallon's State of the State. We'd love to see you there.
That's right. So I'm planning to be there on the 4th floor rotunda, just the big open area there, beginning at 11 o'clock on Monday. So please come find us. I'll have my red button on. If you don't know what I look like, I don't know how you found our podcast, but that's great. Go to our website, letsfixthisok.org. My picture's on there. I'd love to meet you, and we would love to get your impressions before or after the speech and kind of find out what your thoughts are about what's going on this session, what you care about as citizens, as regular folks. What are the most important issues to you? For me, the really key thing is I want to get some people's responses.
Yeah, we would absolutely love to see you there. I would tell you to look for me on the 4th floor as well, but I'll be there closer to 11:30, and also I'm short. So assuming there's a lot of people there, which there will be, you may have trouble finding me in a crowd.
So the State of the State speech will kick off usually between 12 and 12:30. So we encourage you to get there early, or maybe around 11:30, 11:45 if you can, to find a seat and kind of get situated. There's always a pretty good crowd, or always. Last year when I attended, which is the only year I've attended, there was a pretty good crowd. And it was really interesting being there in person, much different than watching it online, because you can kind of feel the pulse of the room. You can feel what proposals, how they land with the legislature. For the last several years, the governor and the legislature have not always seen eye to eye on things.
Yeah, and the speech has not typically been, I say typically, the last few years, has not been really well received.
The moment I can think of last year was the governor was talking about, she said, we have a revenue problem. And everyone was like, yes, we do. She's like, I want to do this and that. We got to, raise revenue, do this. And she said, I want to
raise taxes on everything except personal income and the gross production.
Well, she said,
gas.
yeah, she said, I want to, repeal the tax on groceries. And we're all like, yeah, that'd be great. But also, we need money. And so it's like, we need more money. We're going to cut taxes on groceries. And you're like, yes to both of those things, but they don't necessarily go together. Right. And then she proposed raising taxes on all services, or on 652 services. And some of those didn't make sense. Some did. So it was kind of a mixed bag. And so it was really interesting to kind of look around the room and see people kind of scratching their heads, and some folks whispering to neighbors of yeah, but. And that's something I would not have caught if I was watching it online.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Andy, what, I just said absolutely twice, back to back.
Absolutely.
For those playing the drinking game, You'll get hammered if you take a shot every time I say absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, Andy, what are your top predictions for the state of the state? What do you think is going to happen on Monday?
So I think she's going to propose raising taxes on services again. I think that she will heavily promote the Step Up plan. I don't think that she will specifically state raising taxes on income taxes, but I think that she will. I want to say something about the GPT, but I don't know that she'll even address it directly. Besides, like, we should look at this. I'd be curious. I don't know who writes the governor's speeches, but as you mentioned earlier, some of the policy changes are things the legislature can't change. And so hopefully she will not address those because it's moot, but it's like a cow's opinion. It's moo.
It's moo. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that she will, I think she's going to, I think you're right, she's going to heavily promote parts of the Step Up plan. I think she's going to unequivocally endorse and call for a teacher pay raise.
Yeah.
I think that there are several of the revenue measures that she's going to endorse specifically. She's going to come out in favor of the cigarette tax, the fuel tax, the wind power tax, the gaming tax. I actually think that she will probably not call for an increase in the personal income tax. I think she will call for refundable income tax credits. I think she's going to call to do away with some of those.
I think also she will heavily promote criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
She did last year.
Yeah.
It's a common sense thing that everyone supports.
Except for like 5 people in the House.
Well, the holdup was Biggs, and he's gone now. He moved up.
true.
So I think we might be able to get those passed this year. So, Scott, I'm going to propose that we hold off on giving our predictions for what's actually going to happen during this session until Monday, until our recording on Monday. And during that, we're each going to give our predictions, a yes or no, on like a pass or no pass on a list of things. And we'll make that list publicly available. And so if you as listeners, we'll put it out on social media and send it maybe as an email as well. If you want to cast your votes and send it in, whoever gets the most right will get something, maybe a tote bag.
I mean, that's been our gift of choice.
Yeah, but so far I've funded those out of pocket. I'd like to.
I'll tell you, we'll make it interesting. Whoever wins, we will love to have you as a guest on the pod, and I will personally finance a nice bottle of whiskey or wine or beer, your choice.
What if they're underage?
Well, then I'll
Sparkling grape juice.
And then I'll think of something else. I'm assuming we don't have many. Under 21 listeners.
Ye of little faith.
Nah, that's. Yeah.
So if you win, if you get the most right on this list, and we will reiterate this, and we'll hash out the details on our. We're making it up as we go along. We'll hash out the details on Monday, but the winner, we'll say, gets to come on the podcast with us and something else.
Yeah,
yet to be determined.
Something delicious that you'll enjoy.
All right, great. So as a quick recap, we do have some upcoming events. We've mentioned Monday, February 5th is the State of the State address. Just plan on noon on Monday. Think about that and show up if you can. And then remember that February 22nd is our first Capitol Day, 9 o'clock in the morning in the Blue Room. It's on the second floor. Go to our Facebook page. We've got the event there, facebook.com/letsfixthisok. Also, it's on our website, letsfixthisok.org.
As we're going through the session, you're going to hear us call out bills and talk about them frequently. We will, I think undoubtedly slip into kind of the vernacular of talking about, the tax cut bill or this revenue bill or that animals belong to Almighty God bill. Whenever possible, though, we're going to refer to bills by their House and Senate bill designation. And that's important because you can go to Legiscan, LEGISCAN.com. And at Legiscan, you can sign up for a free account, and you can track these bills along with us. So if you hear us talk about a bill that really piques your interest and you want to know how it's progressing through the legislature, what's happening in committee, you can sign up for an account on Legiscan.com and get those updates right along with us. And we really encourage you to do that.
Yeah, it's a great service. And you can read the full text of the bill on there, which might be a great way to go to sleep at night.
Absolutely.
Or during the middle of the day, for that matter.
All right, Andrew.
All right, so that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, you can connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Fix This Okay. Scott is at SC Melson, and I am at Andy OKC. You can also like our Facebook page, facebook.com/letsfixthisok. And our website is letsfixthisok.org. And on there, you can sign up for our newsletter, read our blog, and find resources and details about upcoming events like those that we've mentioned. Our podcast is edited and produced by Scott and me, and Let's Pod This is a member of the Mostly Harmless Media Network. Our theme music is provided by the Sugar Free All-Stars. Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, grassroots organization, and we strive to educate and equip all Oklahomans to engage with your government. We encourage you to get involved in any way that you can. We'd love for you to come to our events. And remember, decisions are made by those who show up. Thanks a lot.